I'm going to, we've got Phil in.
Seats up here. Todd's got some seats next. Right here, guys.
Right here. He doesn't bite. Again, we'd like to welcome everyone to the October 22nd, 2019 City Council, and I will call the council and the council meeting to order. Sal, would you lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This evening, we have set aside 30 minutes for public comment. And during our public comment, anyone may speak on a topic other than a matter that's in litigation, a quasi-judicial land use matter, or a matter scheduled for a public hearing at some future date. Comments are kept to 3 minutes, and we will time you, and we have enough tonight that we need to stay to that 3-minute limit. Speakers may not yield their time to others, and in order to encourage an environment of openness, courtesy, and respect of differing views, please refrain from behavior that would be disruptive during the meeting, such as making loud noises, clapping, shouting, booing, or any other activity that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. Abusive language will not be tolerated. And we're going to start this evening. We've got some students from the McMinnville High School who are here to talk about climate change as climate ambassadors. And I think, Laura, are you the teacher, Laura? Yeah. Yes, and we've got 6 students, and I think I've got them. And so did you want to make a comment, or do you want the students?
Yeah, I think we'd all like to come and I can introduce them.
Okay, so what I'd like to, Nicholas Payton. Nicholas, if you'd come up, and you've got 3 minutes to share with the council your thoughts.
I think she wanted to introduce them.
Oh, go ahead, then go ahead, yeah. Okay. But come up to the mic, Laura, okay.
Yeah, can we all just bring it ourselves?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
They're all attached.
Yeah. Oh, those are attached. Okay, well, we'll trade out. That's okay.
Okay.
All right. Can I
So
start now?
who do you have with you?
Okay, I have Chloe Bachman with me tonight.
Okay.
And I had it in order. So it's Chloe and then Sophia
Okay.
and Nick.
Ma'am, could you repeat your name for
Yes,
the
I'll introduce myself as my time started.
Okay.
Okay, Laura Searing is my name. Is it time for me to go?
And so go ahead. So it's Chloe?
Chloe?
Yeah, Chloe, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, just a second.
She's good.
I was going to introduce them if that's okay. Okay, so good evening. My name is Laura Searing and I live at 548 Southeast 1st Street. And thank you for this opportunity to bring forth our concerns to you. I'm with this wonderful group of students and also concerned citizens to talk about this proposed climate resolution that we have prepared for you, this document. And in addition to being a concerned citizen of McMinnville, I am an ecologist and a science teacher at the high school and a mother. And for most of my life, I've heard this debate about why our climate is warming and how much of it is due to human activities versus a natural trend we would see. And quite honestly, I'm sick of this debate. We know that our activities are making a major impact, and we need to do more at every level to offset that change. We know that 8 of the last 10 years have been the warmest on record, and we know that every year we're seeing more extreme weather events, more extreme storms, more droughts, more wildfires, melting of glaciers and polar ice caps, warming of our oceans, especially at the poles. And all of these changes are affecting people and ecosystems around the globe. Not only that, but sometimes it's causing massive die-off of species and extinctions. And so we're here to ask for your help at a local level We know that as individuals, we all make choices and we're doing what we can to offset our own individual impacts, as well as to reduce our carbon footprints, but it's not enough. And so we're here, I'm here with these students, they're gonna speak in a minute, and we're asking you to adopt this emergency climate resolution at a local level so that we can see change at a local level. We're hoping Oregon will also step in, the state legislators, because our federal government is not doing enough to offset this climate crisis. So thank you so much. The 6 students will be speaking, and we're hoping that maybe in a couple of months, you'll allow us to come back on the agenda after you have a chance to review the document, and we can hear your response for if you're willing and how you'd be able to implement this climate resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Chloe.
Chloe,
Hi, I'm Chloe Bachman. I live
pull the mic a little closer to you. Thank you.
at 714 Northeast Cowell Street. I'm a senior at MHS and I'm co-president of the Environmental Club. Ever since I was little, I have imagined myself having 2 kids when I'm older, a girl and a boy. When I'm 27, because by then I'll own a mansion. But now when I think about my future, kids aren't a part of it because how can I bring kids into a world where I am aware that they will have the responsibility placed on them of fixing previous generations' mistakes and selfishness? I make sacrifices in my own life to reduce the amount of environmental impact that I have. I'm a vegetarian, I walk when I can. I think about the amount of packaging on everything I buy and where it came from. But it's frustrating when a broke high school student can make sacrifices, but officials and leaders and adults choose not to. And it's frustrating when I consider sacrificing my dream of just having a family due to actions which are not in my control. Climate change isn't a problem which is hypothetical and far away from us. In the Willamette Valley, every season is warming, and we are soon going to be subject to extreme fire and flash floods and drought and food shortages and a really depressed economy. This is a climate emergency, and we need to act and treat it as such, and we urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Chloe. Who do we have next? Is that
I'm Sophia Hampton.
Sophia Hampton? Okay, go ahead, Sophia. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sophia Hampton. I live at 333 Northwest 9th Street. Thank you for taking the time to listen tonight. I've lived in the same house for my entire life. I've lived in McMinnville my entire life, and I've even lived on planet Earth each and every day I've been alive. I love my house, our town, and our world, and I want future generations to be able to love it too. Unfortunately, there is a chance that this will not be possible. Reports are continuously coming out about the absolutely detrimental effects of climate change and the timeline that we're on. Some say we have 30 years until we reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming threshold decided by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Others say we have as little as 11 or 12 years. When I think about this in relation to my own life and the lives of my peers, I am terrified for my future. As a child, I would fantasize about life as a grown-up, similar to how Chloe did. What freedom and possibility it held. I can travel wherever I want, pursue whatever career I choose, and even one day have a family of my own. As a teenager, my thoughts on adulthood look very different. Sure, I can travel, but planes have such high carbon emissions, and half the places I want to go will be underwater or in major drought by the time I'm able to. But that's okay, I can still get my dream job, as long as I feel like the industry I'm working in isn't a huge contributor to climate issues, which does narrow things down. But that's fine, even if I have to get a different job over my dream job, at least I can still raise a family. But do I really want to bring a child into this world? It almost seems unethical to do so, knowing all that I do about climate change. Anyways, you get the idea. All of my dreams have some pretty heavy strings attached. When I think about my legacy and my possible future children's legacy, it does not seem positive. Will I even be able to take my kids to the place where I grew up? How do I know that McMinnville will still be functioning in a reasonable way? Wildfires and drought, among other things, are the way things are heading. McMinnville is rich in history and innovation alike, and this town is incredibly important and meaningful to thousands and thousands of people, but climate change does not spare anybody. It especially does not spare those who live in poverty. According to the 2017 census performed by the ACS, 16%, which is about 5,500 of McMinnville residents, live in poverty. For these people, increased food prices due to agricultural challenges, more extreme temperatures, and health problems due to proximity and long exposure to environmental hazards are very real possibilities that are absolutely debilitating. I hear people talk about this quote-unquote homelessness crisis so many towns and cities are facing, and I hope you know that climate change will only make it worse. We are running out of time. Children and youth like me across the world are running to people like you to make a difference. You have the power and you control our future. Right now, McMinnville has the chance to lead by example, make a much needed positive change, and give hope and opportunity to its current and future residents. I urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Is Nicholas?
Yes.
Nicholas Payton. Nicholas, welcome.
My name is Nick Payton, and I'm a student here at MHS, and I'm also the co-president of Environmental Club. I've grown up spending a lot of time in nature and a great deal of time watching BBC nature documentaries, so I've often dreamed of one day being able to explore the vibrant ecosystems that I often see on TV. But as Chloe and Sophia mentioned, if we continue to do the same things that we are doing to the earth today, those ecosystems won't be there the same way that we know them today. And this is bad not only because we would be losing a great deal of biodiversity and thousands of species would be adversely affected by what we're doing, but also because the negative effects would and already are reaching us. So I think it's extremely important to make a change, and that's why we're here today. So one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions in the US is from transportation, and the easiest way to cut down on this is, as most people know, by using public transportation. And looking to cities like Portland, it is clear that they've done a great job at doing this. They have buses and bikes and trains, and it's easy to think that because it's a large city, that it is very important that we have those systems, and that is true, but I think it's also important to have those systems in place in smaller and more medium-sized towns like McMinnville. I know that we have a public transportation system here in McMinnville, but it is really hard to find information on it, and many of the people that I've talked to about it don't know that it exists. So I would urge you to look into ways to improving it and possibly making McMinnville a town that is more friendly towards forms of transportation that don't contribute as much to climate change, such as walking and biking. When looking to solve these global issues, I think it is extremely important to act local first, because there's kind of a lack of action in our federal government, and so I would strongly urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Who do we have next?
Ukiah.
Ukiah,
Yes,
welcome.
thank you. Good evening, my name is Ukiah Halloran-Steiner, and I'm in 9th grade, and I would like to thank all of you for letting us speak here tonight. I would also like to thank everyone, especially fellow students, who came to support this proposed resolution. One major cause of climate change is deforestation. 99% of the world's temperate forests have been altered somehow through land clearing for agriculture, population growth, clear cutting for logging, and more human-caused activities. Luckily, though, there's a really simple way of fixing all this: plant more trees. Planting billions of trees across the world is one of the biggest and cheapest ways of taking CO2 out of the atmosphere to tackle the climate crisis. That's from The Guardian 3 months ago. This information and more like it is accessible to all of us, and yet it is apparent that more and more of us feel helpless. We are asking that you, the City Council of McMinnville, resolve to plant and maintain at least 200 more trees on the city's property every year. One mature tree can absorb up to 48 pounds of carbon a year. 48 pounds of pollution it removes from our air so we can breathe clean oxygen. Each person needs about 7 trees worth of oxygen, and the population of McMinnville is about 35,000, so the city should have a bare minimum of 277,000 trees for oxygen to breathe. While we may have enough trees just to give us air to breathe, this math still doesn't calculate in the extra pollution created by businesses and residents here. Keep in mind that for every gallon of gas used in a vehicle, 20 pounds of carbon dioxide is released. The solution to this complex and quite serious problem is simply plant more trees. If you as the city can't do the planting, make it a community event. Turn towards Youth for Solutions. Don't be afraid to ask for help from your community. I know there are people who are eager to help protect future generations. In the 1940s, about 355,000 acres of trees burned in the Tillamook Forest near us. In response, almost 1 million seedlings were planted by school children alone, and the Tillamook burn is not only green again, but it is voraciously sequestering carbon. If we could organize like that in the 50s, imagine what youth could do now with the help of social media and political leaders like you. We just need your help. Also, we all know that McMinnville is building up quickly. We run the risk of cementing over all of the previous green space, so we encourage that you, our city leaders, regulate that a larger proportion of each buildable lot be permeable earth rather than natural surfaces. This will allow for native vegetation and trees to be planted and will help McMinnville residents feel less helpless and more helpful. Personally, I want to live a full life, and I don't want to get sick or die young because our earth can't sustain life. We are facing a climate emergency, and our future is in grave danger, so we ask for your help. We all create it, so let's all fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. We have, is it Ethan?
Yes.
Ethan, welcome. Ethan Downs,
Yes.
welcome.
Hello, my name is Ethan Downs. I live on 1358 Southwest Galore Street. This matters to me due to its importance within the city, our city, the city that me and my peers grew up in, the city that provided the base for most of the positive memories of my past and opened my eyes to the opportunities in the future. I feel obligated to do whatever I can to help take care of this city and community, and I believe to do that, we should evaluate the usage of energy within our city, such as in the use of fossil fuels in all city operations with a view toward reducing said use through clean and renewable energy options, such as electric vehicle fleets, voluntary renewable programs, new technologies, mitigation, and other measures. Likewise, we also ask for support within energy efficiency and demand response programs offered by McMinnville Water and Light and encourage city operations, residents, businesses to sign up for these programs. Furthermore, we urge the encouragement and education in citizens in the installation of renewable energy and energy efficiency measures in the construction of new and remodeled homes and businesses through the consultation with applicants and the identification of financial incentives. Additionally, we prompt commitment to working closely with business partners, including McMinnville Water and Light, NW National, and residents to understand McMinnville's economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions and the programs, partnerships, and technologies that can be used to reduce them. Thank you for listening, and we urge you to pass this resolution.
Thank you, Ethan. And then we must have Megan. Megan, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Megan Bomberger. I live at 1501 Northwest Medina Drive in McMinnville. Again, I'd like to take the time to say thank you for letting us speak our minds and create real change within our community. Oftentimes as teenagers, our voices aren't heard and our opinions are thrown aside because we're too young or we don't know what the real world is like. And sure, I don't know how taxes work or what a mortgage is, but I've grown up learning about the real world and it doesn't really seem that great to me. People are so caught up in themselves and their own beliefs that they overlook the real global problems they're contributing to. The most pressing is climate change, but it's up to us to fix it. We should be worrying about college and what to wear to the football game, but instead we're worried about our government, the well-being of our future children, and the health of our planet. We are sick of the debate surrounding climate change that has been happening our entire lives. There's no debate. Climate change is real and it's happening at an alarming rate. We are in the midst of a climate crisis. Global temperatures are rising at an alarming rate. Entire ecosystems are collapsing and we are on the brink of a mass extinction, and it's because of our ignorance as a human race. But we can change. With small steps like being aware of our own consumption and impact, and big steps like passing this resolution and creating legislative change across the world. But it shouldn't be us. In the end, it's all up to you. You're the ones making legislation. You're the ones voting on these resolutions which affect us all. We hope to be on the agenda in the next few months once you've had time to consider the proposed resolution. On behalf of our generation and generations to follow, we urge you to acknowledge the climate crisis and inspire towns across our county and state to do the same. We urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard from 6 students from the high school. Laura, thank you for, she's somewhere, there we go. Laura, thank you for bringing these students and bringing this issue to our attention. What I think I'm going to do is, we've got 2 pages. There's a lot of asks here. A lot of these are things that the city might be able to approach. There's a lot of them that are outside of our control that probably wouldn't be appropriate to have in a resolution if we can't address it. What I'm going to ask is our city attorney, David Koch, to take this back to our city manager, Jeff, and have the staff look at it and make a determination what may be some things that might be appropriate that fit into our strategic plan, because we've got things in our strategic plan that talk about resiliency and livability and some of the things that you're talking about. I will tell you on another front, this council has, when it comes to sustainability, we've taken some really tough stands on plastic bags, and we've taken a lot for that. So it is a council that listens, and it's one that we truly want to be in a leading arena for sustainability within the community. So I think what we'll do is we'll have staff look at this, and we've got your information. We'll keep you informed when this comes back up, because we'll probably do something in a work session where we just listen. Not to, we have a presentation to us, and then we will talk, and then we can determine what it would take to have this brought to us, possibly as a resolution, if the council so warrants that needs to happen. So thank you. Appreciate all of your preparation and the message that was so succinctly given to us this evening. So thank you. Go ahead.
I would like to make a couple of comments if I could. Sorry, I know it's out of order. First, I just wanted to say thanks to all of you for bringing this issue to us. And I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, I reviewed these after they brought this document up, and I think most of the requests they're making are very thoughtful, well-researched. I would encourage us and our staff to do as much as we can to adopt as many of these items as we can, and maybe look for some areas where we might be able to do a little more in some of these areas. Because it is a crisis. And the young lady who got a little emotional up there, I just want to say to you and to your whole group, I really admire and respect your passion and courage for coming up and taking this issue on and bringing it up to us. Your generation cannot take the reins of power soon enough, in my opinion. I think a lot of the problems that we have as a country and as civilization that have been deferred for 20, 30, 40 years are going to get solved and significantly addressed by your generation. And I hope that our council in a small way can give you a little bit of a headwind in that effort. So thanks for coming out today, and I appreciate your work.
Thank you, Saul. So,
I'd like to make a couple comments as well, since we're taking out-of-turn comments. I also had a chance to read over these, and I think there's some things that speak really, that are strong statements that the city can evaluate doing right away within what's been proposed here. Especially when we are talking about number 6 on this list, which is increasing availability of public transportation, bicycles, and ride-sharing opportunities within the city and with connections with other cities. Number 7, pursuing LEED certification and new construction of City of McMinnville buildings and energy-efficient upgrades and retrofits, especially as we evaluate our current buildable lands and our current building inventory within the city and whatever is going to come of that, whatever decisions the council makes going forward. I think keeping an eye to that would be only to our benefit. And number 8 and number 9 as well, I feel, are things that would be very easy to incorporate. And then I would echo the mayor's concerns about things that we'd have less control or say over when we're working with our city partners, and we can't necessarily mandate or dictate what happens within those. But I think that there's a tremendous amount of great content here. And also, just going back up to number 1, which was the 200 trees that were mentioned, I think that's a great goal, and I would be interested in hearing from our department heads about the feasibility of that, knowing that the city lands are used for different things, and it might not be always feasible to do to me an exact number, but keeping an eye towards the goal of increasing that type of planting, I think, is a fantastic idea.
Well, it's appropriate that we have the Landscape Review Committee coming before us tonight to give their annual report, which I know that's something we talk about quite a bit in that group. So, go ahead, Kelly.
I got a couple.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that we're already doing a number of these things. So as we discuss this, I think we ought to also say that we've taken certain steps already on a number of these issues, just so you're aware.
Thank you, Kelly. Zach?
Yes, thank you again for your time, effort, and energy. I'll just jump into a couple of quick ones. I think this is really close to something we could jump behind. It looks really good, and I'd hate to walk back any or most of these without understanding some of the far-reaching ramifications. So that would be my interest in figuring out what some of those reaching impacts are. 2 other ones to explore, maybe for you guys. I didn't see anything mentioned about single-use plastics, but maybe as far as the city's purchasing habits, we could start reaching into that and getting rid of our ability to purchase anything that would can be considered single-use plastics. I think we buy a lot of stuff, and if we didn't buy single-use plastics at anything we do, that could be a good leadership position. And then maybe talk about events. I know, for example, there are certain events that feature gasoline, and maybe we don't want to have those in our city. And so if you guys are looking at policies to improve air quality, that would be somewhere to look as well. And then perhaps getting started on the task force early to keep us moving forward on this, outside of this 13, potentially 15-point process. Look at getting started on something sooner to continue to look at this, start this, and improve our processes always, not just do one thing once and then feel good about it.
Thank you. Wendy, we're outside of typically what we do, you guys. I want you to know that, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We should have had him come in as a presentation, then we could have had some dialogue, but go ahead.
I'll be very quick. I would like to echo some of the comments. As the youth, not having been jaded by the pressures of the world, I encourage you to keep talking, because that's what spurs a lot of change. And it helps us to remember where we're going, right? So please don't be discouraged. This helps us to remember certain things that we might be buried under the responsibilities of all of the things that we're looking at, and it helps us to remember to keep that in mind when we're looking at how to do these things, right? It's a lens that we look through, really, about how we design our future together, right? And so thank you so much for coming in, and please keep talking, because it's really, really valuable. And we also have, I know we already have an ordinance from Cool Mac on there about climate change, so we should bring that back up and talk about that too. So the city already has a history of committing to our solution for climate change, and we have to remember what that commitment is in response to your testimony tonight. So thank you so much.
And then I'll look down to Adam and say, I don't want to leave you out, sir.
Definitely can second just about anything that's been shared tonight. The only thing that I would like to add is to hone in what the mayor started with, is that I would like this to be a little bit more specific, that can be carried on full-heartedly and not just be a 15-point bulletin that's a paper tiger that says, hey, we passed this resolution, but is it really doing anything? So I'd rather see 6 or 8 points that we look to and look through that lens all the time instead of just having this wide-ranging policy that says we as McMinnville passed an emergency climate change policy. So, and then the other lens is just the feasibility of it all and what's the cost to our citizens if we as a city decide to operate that way. Everything I look at that we pass, I look through that lens, and it's not cheap to live in McMinnville when you look at Yamhill County as a whole. So I want to make sure that we're not putting people farther out and creating more poverty by passing a resolution, even though it is better for the future generations. I have a young one. I definitely appreciate you guys coming and speaking tonight, but we also can't just make policy without looking at the costs and the ramifications of it.
Thank you, Adam. And I think that's why giving staff an opportunity to have expertise in a number of these areas and the programs we're involved in, for them to take a look at it first and come back to us, and then we can have discussion at a later date. So thanks, you guys. Well done. I just want to recognize at the beginning of our meeting, we had a group of Cub Scouts with us, quite a number of Cub Scouts with us that were here on their citizenship in the community. They were young ones and they didn't know how long that was going to go, so they've taken off, but I did want to recognize that group that was with us this evening also. With that being said, what I'd like to do is open it up for our presentations, and so the Landscape Review Committee will have their annual update, and so I'll call on Planning Director Heather Richards to present. Heather?
Mayor, Jamie Fleckenstein's going to present to you, but before all the students leave, I just wanted to encourage you. You guys did a fabulous job, and we have openings for youth on all of our city committees where you can vote on items that the city is working on, and I would encourage you to think about that because we would love to see you participate.
Well put. We do need student participation. Jamie and Sharon, welcome.
I'm Sharon Gunter. I am the Vice Chair for the Landscape Review Committee. This is Jamie Fleckenstein from the Planning Department. He prepares the materials that our committee reviews on a monthly basis, and he helps us find answers for the questions that we have. He's going to do the presentation tonight, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Sharon. Good evening, councilors, mayor. We're happy to share with you the activities and accomplishments of the Landscape Review Committee over the past calendar year. So I'll begin with just a brief description of the committee itself. The purpose of the Landscape Review Committee is to ensure the appearance of the city that is enhanced by encouraging quality landscaping that benefits and protects the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And that's forefront on the mind of the committee and the projects that we undertake as the committee. The Landscape Committee responsibilities are to review plans that are required by zoning code. They are an advisory council to Planning Director, Planning Commission, and to you, the City Council, on issues relating to their purpose. We have an established monthly meeting the third Wednesday of the month at the Community Development Center at 12 p.m. It's a public meeting, and we love having visitors, members of the public, and applicants come to enjoy the conversation, and hopefully people walk away learning something about what it is we do and why we do it. Currently, there are 5 Landscape Review Committee members who bring a wealth of experience and local knowledge to the committee. Rob Stevenson, Sharon Gunter, Rosemarie Cowren, Josh Kearns, and Tim McDaniel. They represent landscape architects, designers, contractors, garden, and plant enthusiasts, and all share a great passion for what they do. So in 2019, the Landscape Review Committee has reviewed 28 applications to date, including 13 landscape plans, 2 street tree plans for subdivisions, 12 street tree removal requests, and 1 street tree improvement plan. And the total number of applications are about on par with what was done a year ago at this time, although the distribution of those is a little bit different. And that's noted in the staff report that I provided to you. Some examples of some of the landscape plans that have been reviewed to date for different projects. This is the landscape plan for the Falcon Suites project, a commercial development on between Baker and Adams on Highway 99 corridor. So it's a highly visible entry point going towards downtown McMinnville that the Landscape Review Committee was able to review to ensure that that was meeting city code and requirement at that key location in the city. A landscape plan for Old Stone Village shows how the interaction between different land uses is key to the committee's function. This plan here has an RV storage lot adjacent to a residential area, and how the landscape both buffers the adjacent residential and provides screening of the land use there from the adjacent properties was a key factor in the review of this plan. Another landscape plan on Highway 99 is a food truck park that landscaping was provided for, and this one sparked a lot of lively conversation in the committee, and the result of it all was what hopefully will be a pleasant food truck park for people to go to and enjoy different culinary experiences, but the landscaping hopefully will play an important part of that. In addition to plan review, the committee tackled some of its 2019 work plan projects. A big accomplishment early in the year that the city council played a big role in was the street tree list update. The Landscape Review Committee had some goals to improve the street tree list, to make it more user-friendly, more diverse, to improve the diversity of the urban forest in McMinnville, and to provide more information to users of the list to help select the right tree for the right place, to avoid some of the conflicts that that might otherwise occur with street trees. And I think by all accounts, the feedback that the committee has received from this street tree list update is that it has been well received and has met the goals that the committee set forth when updating this list. So it's been well received, and the committee is very proud of its work here. It's too bad many of the high school students left. This project here takes place at the high school and engaged many of the students there. Each year, the city undertakes an Arbor Day project as part of its Tree City USA status, and this year McMinnville celebrated its 22nd consecutive year as a Tree City USA city. And in this year's project, the Landscape Review Committee helped organize funding for the project through grant application and donation of trees. And we were able to organize an event to plant 3 new trees at the high school outside the Bear Hugs preschool facility there. And we engaged the McMinnville High School students and staff to help design and fabricate a memorial plaque in the welding and fabrication program, and then also engaged students to help with the actual planting project itself. And so there's some pictures of the progress and the event. Again, this was a well-received project, and in fact, the Oregon Community Trees, who provided the grant for materials for the memorial plaque, wants to hold a quarterly meeting here in the city of McMinnville to tour this project site and other urban forestry projects. So hopefully we're getting the word out that McMinnville is a city that loves its trees and urban forestry, and the Landscape Review Committee has played a big part in making that happen.
Jamie?
Yes.
I know we plant a lot more than 3 trees a year, so any estimate about how many we do or are planted around the city on an annual basis?
I really don't have that number in front of me. The one thing that the Landscape Review Committee does at every opportunity when it reviews street tree removal permits, which often come about because of conflict with public improvements. It's not the right tree in the right place, and so it's lifting sidewalks or interfering with underground utilities, water lines, etc. The Landscape Review Committee always will require replacement street trees when that opportunity exists. And that's a extremely high priority for the committee.
And then subdivision development really brings quite a few. So that Baker Street subdivision out there, there are significant trees that have been brought into our footprint because of that.
Sure.
And then just annual tree plantings. I know my Rotary group, and it's a lot of public people come out, citizens come out and plant trees on an annual basis too, around Arbor Day and other times. Rosemary Corrin might be able to give us some better numbers on that one.
Yeah, there's a number of volunteer groups that do participate in efforts like that, but I don't have that number.
I'm sorry, okay, I thought you might, but I wasn't sure.
If I can follow up, councilors, there's also on the Landscape Review Committee work plan. It wasn't one of the high-level projects for this year, so we weren't able to undertake it, but it is on the work plan to do a public inventory of our trees, so to understand how many trees are in the city of McMinnville, and we talked about that and doing it in partnership with youth groups and the school districts and things of that nature. So that could be something after tonight's discussion that we move up into a higher priority and establish those partnerships.
Great idea.
That forward.
Yeah, and in fact, that's what I was just going to mention. Coming up in the next year, the Landscape Review Committee will continue its charge to review the landscape plan and street tree plan applications. Again, we'll continue planning and carrying out the Arbor Day 2020 event as McMinnville applies again to maintain its Tree City USA status. And then we'll also be working on lists for the 2020 work plan, which we will be tackling here in the next couple of months here at the end of the year. But as Heather mentioned, some of those items that we didn't quite get to this year that were a higher priority of the remaining items are a street tree inventory for the city of McMinnville that would identify gaps in the street tree program where trees could possibly be filled in, and to provide and create a right tree, right place informational brochure that would promote proper tree selection and placement to avoid some of the issues that would require larger, older, mature trees to be removed because of conflicts they might present. I wanted to bring this to the City Council, and it's doesn't appear in the staff report. We just had some conversation about this topic in last week's Landscape Review Committee meeting, so I apologize that it's not in the staff report, but I'll try to go through this conversation that's been a topic throughout the year at the Landscape Review Committee. The Landscape Review Committee has had multiple discussions of looking into providing advisory review of city public improvement projects that involve landscaping and street trees. Currently, that's not permitted or required by code. The enabling code for the committee requires that all landscape plans of the zoning ordinance, Chapter 17, shall be submitted and reviewed by the Landscape Review Committee. And if we look at the Chapter 1757 landscaping and 1758 trees, it requires landscape and street tree plans for private development in specific zones, but not those same plans to be reviewed by the committee for public improvement projects. And the Landscape Review Committee would request advisory review of these projects to be able to apply the same consistent process and standards for the city projects as they do for the private development that they currently review. There's an element of knowledge that the committee feels that they lack when communicating with the public about the public improvement projects. Oftentimes, public will come to the committee looking for information and answers to questions about landscape in particular, and without review, the landscape committee doesn't have the ability to engage the public on that level and be ambassadors for public improvement projects with the landscape and street tree components. And then additionally, the ability to fulfill the committee purpose, which is to encourage and permit, or well, let me get the specific language. To ensure that the appearance of the city of McMinnville is enhanced by encouraging quality landscaping, which will benefit and protect the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. And that talks about the entire city, not just private development. And so the committee feels that it's limited in its ability to fulfill its purpose.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I don't understand why we would ever function as a do what I say, not what I do city. I don't think that's what the city of McMinnville is, and I fully support this proposed change. I think we should absolutely be holding ourselves to our own standards.
Okay. Yeah, so the Landscape Review Committee did ask that planning staff explore legislative changes to make this advisory review of these improvement projects happen. And I guess the committee would ask for city council feedback or guidance relative to this direction of staff.
I know that it impacts engineering and probably Parks and Rec, and what I would submit that we do is have a work session on it, because yes, as Remy says, I think we need to be consistent in applying the standards that we would have to the public, and we have substantial experience that is on our review committee, but I do think we need to explore both sides of this, and I think it warrants to have a work session and hearing from Mike and Susan, and then from the committee, and then laying all the facts out in front of us. You know, Zach is on the committee and represents the council there, but Kelly and I have probably been going consistently for well over 2 years now, and so we really understand the impact that you guys have, and every decision it's taken with a lot of discussion and thoroughness. So I'll bring that up to Jeff, but Zach, you?
Yeah, I'm, having sat in on a lot of those discussions, it seemed silly that we didn't participate in that, and I was glad you brought this up here for this purpose of this discussion, and think that we should be doing it. And I guess my question is what are those ramifications? But if it's nothing substantial, then I don't see why we just don't make that subtle change and include them in the process for reviewing the work we're doing. And additionally, there's been some discussion on follow through to not completing our own landscape projects different, and holding the public to a different, I guess, the private projects to a different standard, and ensuring that, and staying on them, that they get done and ours allowed to not get done. So I'm in support.
I'm supportive. I definitely feel like there's a tremendous amount of expertise, plus some standards that have been created that are very helpful, I think, to anyone who is planning on doing landscape work. But I do see the necessity to meet with the various department heads and kind of talk it through as to what level we would want to have that sort of review happen at.
May I just ask a kind of an open-ended question, but it seems to me like the answer to this kind of comes from the department heads, and so is it something that really warrants a work session, or is this something where the historic or the landscape review committee could meet with department heads about various implications?
It may be that it'd be better to have it at a higher level and then bring whatever the results are to the council.
But I think you'd want to have the results of that discussion come to us before we make a determination of change.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking no matter what, it would come back to us before there was a change, and I just don't know if it would warrant a work session in the sense that I feel like staff wouldn't bring us a recommendation if they didn't feel it was warranted, and in this particular instance, maybe a small thing, but holding the city the same standards that we hold private developers to seems to be more common sense to me, and that yeah.
I would second Remy on that I don't think it warrants a work session. I think we could give Jamie some talking points to iron out, and it could come back in a staff report with a resolution. We could vote on it.
Yeah.
I mean, the big question for me is, what do you see your workload changing as a committee by going to this model? Is it going to be where you have to meet twice as often, or, and then the question for Mike and Susan and any other city staff is, how much is this going to bog down or make the wheels of government grind even slower in getting a project done?
Well, I guess the workload would just increase depending upon how many public improvement projects there are. I can think over the time that I've been working with the committee, it would be projects like Hill Road improvements.
One of the big ones would be Old Sheridan, that we're starting down that path.
Yeah.
I think the other edge of that sword that I've heard the committee talk about that is way over my head, because I don't know the name of any tree or plant, but that you guys have talked about your ability to look at those plans and identify savings and efficiencies in those landscape plans and make those recommendations. So perhaps there's some get back to, I know ideally I would share those concerns about grinding the gears a little bit slower, but there are some benefits too. It wouldn't just be all for detraction.
And I would like to just offer up that I have received feedback historically from the public and from different individuals that have been dissatisfied with the city implementation of landscaping, because there has not been native species used, because we have ivy growing up the side of the planning department, and which goes to seed when it gets to the top, which means it spreads, and it's an invasive species because we've had plantings that are too close together on city property, meaning that we're going to be spending additional dollars down the line on maintenance and thinning, and so getting ahead of some of those later on costs that are already being identified by the public, I think is a real benefit to the city. And this isn't only there's not only one side on which the dollars and the dimes will fall on this. And if native species cost more than non-native species, which I don't know if they do or they don't, but if there is some additional cost on the forefront of these projects, I would also be curious if there are not cost savings in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I think we've heard from the council. We know what to do, that we bring the parties together to the committee and then update that ask to us, and I think that will be sufficient for us to move forward. Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
I know you're right in the middle of your...
Yeah, Sorry.
That was actually the end. Well, hey, if there are other questions or comments about the Landscape Review Committee and the work we've been doing over the past year, I'm happy to answer them at this point.
Well, I wanted to address to Zach, one thing to remember, vine maple, and you got it made, okay? That's the best tree, that's the
Is it a
best
tree? Is it a bush? Is it, I don't know.
Yes.
Is it a cocktail?
It's one that the roots tend to grow down and not surface.
You need the Latin name there.
Yeah. Jamie,
They know it.
know
I'm sure
that
they
too.
know it.
Acer circinatum.
It's just,
And hands down, this is the most fun committee to go sit in on.
so I guess, I don't have a question, but I had a little note in my committee assignment review. One thing that came up at the last Landscape Review Committee meeting that wanted to share with council, and there's nothing here other than I just want to report back on it, and maybe you could illuminate some of to the effect, but the cost and real cost and time to comply with our rules versus the option to not comply, or to not comply but still do the right planting is an interesting discussion. The cost to go through our process, to pick the right tree, to take out the tree, to put the tree down, to do the root barrier, to all of this stuff, which is the right way to do it, is that's our process. That's what we want people to do, is growing to be an encumbrance that is not incentivizing compliance, it's disincentivizing compliance. And so whether or not we can fix it, I don't know. Whether it's just part of the nature of the beast it is something to talk about, but I just want to bring that up, that we are there's the concern that we're disincentivizing compliance. So I don't know if you guys can illuminate on that at all, but that came up at the last meeting, and it didn't seem couched in some of those normal complaints, but it seemed couched in some fairly real concerns and critiques of the process. So.
Sure. Well, I would just note that I have received feedback from individuals going through the process who are surprised to learn that adjacent property owners are responsible for street tree maintenance, replacement, or removal and replacement when faced with a problematic street tree. And at times, those individuals have expressed concern that it's a lot for a property owner to bear. It's been expressed quite a few times to me and to the committee.
And that expression is, like if roots are tearing up a sidewalk, that property owner needs to remove that tree, go through the review process of picking the correct tree, putting in root barrier, and then replacing that sidewalk. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Do you have an estimate of what the total cost is for something like that, Jamie?
The application fee for a tree removal is a $150 application fee that covers partially staff time to prepare reports and do site inspections and review that. But additionally, we've heard that I think to Zach's point, that to an average homeowner, the process may be daunting to go through.
And in that process, does the city require a licensed arborist to remove that tree, or can any Joe go rent a steel chainsaw from Botton's and fall it in the road, buck it up?
Are you asking for a friend, or?
Are you gonna get kicked back from Botton's?
Oh, my.
There are requirements to have it done to certain standards, but there's no requirement that it has to be performed by a certified arborist.
Thank you.
I think just to add some context to this, we have a standard for tree planting that's been established, and the standard's established to ensure the health of the tree for longevity. And so there are costs associated with that in terms of the tree well and the root barrier. But without a standard in which to plant the tree, the homeowner could be in a situation where they're replacing trees on a fairly regular basis because we don't have the standards in which we're planting them. And we just had a discussion about the value of trees in terms of our community's future. In terms of the street tree removal application, that's a lot of work. Jamie and I always joke because he spends so much of his time on street trees in this community because it is such a big value for the community. And when we did the fee schedule, this was one of the fees that we brought into you and said this needs to be subsidized. So the true cost of the time that it takes in terms of, one, identifying whether the tree should be removed, because lots of people want to remove trees that are actually healthy and don't need to be removed. And other people, there are situations where they do need to be removed. So we inspect that, and then we go back and inspect, how the standard in which the tree is replanted as well. So there's time back and forth, and I forgot what the number was, but I thought it was.
I think it was approximately $1,400.
Yeah, so we looked it up the other day after the landscape review committee when someone said it was really expensive, because I was like, but I think this is one of the ones we recommended that we deeply subsidize because we felt, it doesn't make sense. We're all trying to ensure that this community has a good urban forest. The city doesn't have the resources to plant all the trees itself. So we are working in partnership with property owners for the street trees. And so that's the context in which this dialogue takes place. And we don't have numbers for you in terms of how many people complain or don't complain, but I can tell you street tree removal is a fairly large activity in terms of our review for those types of applications, and we can get those numbers to you to be able to put it into context what we're talking about, because we do have a lot that come through the system that we work with that are participating and understand the value of the program.
So there's multiple inspection points throughout the process. Somebody can't remove a tree, grind a stump, and plant a tree in the same afternoon? Legally?
Well, typically not. There are several inspection points.
Okay. And is your complaints more on how much that bogs down the process for a private contractor to remove and replant a tree, or is your complaints more on the overall cost of repairing their sidewalk and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, I haven't received anything about the bogging down the process or anything like that. It's all of the feedback that I've gotten has been one surprise that the city isn't financially responsible for public trees in public right-of-way, and it falls on the property owner, the adjacent property owner, to bear that financial responsibility. And then I've also gotten feedback about the application cost, and surprised that it costs $150 to apply to remove a street tree.
What percentage or some quantifiable measurement of homeowner applications for street tree removals and replacements are removing and replacing trees in which we've previously deemed that one was good, and now it's our okay was either got put in the wrong place, or now we learned more about that tree and that one's no good anymore? What percentage of those fall in that category?
That's a good question, and I don't know what.
If you had to hazard a guess, half?
Well, you only had 12 or 13 this year, correct?
Yes, I think it was 13 street tree removal.
So if you're planning close to 200 a year, probably not that many.
But to Councilor Geary's point, which Jamie and I have had some discussion. So we have what we call So when the subdivisions come in, the developer's required to plant the street trees and and we have this sort of rigorous process for inspection because we want to ensure the health of the tree, longevity of it. There are some species that have been approved in the past that are no longer species that are thriving in McMinnville in terms of it could have infestation from different types of beetles or something of that nature, which we now have taken off the street tree list. But we have some neighborhoods in which these street trees were planted. And consistently, right? And so we are working with those neighborhoods in terms of a street tree replacement plan so they don't have to go through this rigorous process. We're working with them, and if we don't have to go through the rigorous process, we have the ability to just charge for time. And if we can reduce the time significantly, we can reduce any fees significantly. So we're working through what that would look like so we can pre-approve different species in this neighborhood. If you need to remove and replace, this is what you need to do to get that done.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I thought it was a wise choice. Because, some of those trees really shouldn't have been there.
Jamie, you have an opening on your committee, correct?
Yes, there are 2 positions.
And are those just general at-large positions, or are they specialized?
No, all the membership is at large. And there is a youth position open as well.
So I hear.
That's unfilled.
And we're having the retiring committee members are reapplying though also, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And how many applications have you gotten so far besides the reapplications of the retiring committee members?
1 additional, I believe, to date.
Okay. Is there anything we as a council can do to support your committee better than we already do?
Sharon, do you have any?
No, I think just being able to ask for being able to give input on city projects was one of the big things. And the fact that if we know what's happening with the city projects, we can answer questions for the general public. It just seems like that's good public relations for the city. And we feel awkward not being able to answer their questions. So we appreciate the help you give us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Wendy?
Yeah, you mentioned that there's been an increase in the number of street tree removal requests, and you mentioned what the most common reasons are, but do you know why the increase? Is there more awareness about the impacts of trees, or are we doing something different?
I think one of the reasons is we've seen, in particular, a lot of applications coming across for a variety of tree that was planted about 20 years ago that has about a 20-year life cycle, lifespan. And we're seeing a lot of applications come across for that one particular tree species.
That makes sense.
And then a significant number have been raised sidewalks, that the roots have come up and really raised the sidewalks. And to cut that root to be able, then that would really have an impact on the life of the tree. So it's the cause of the sidewalks and then remedy that would take the...
Yeah, and then just bad placement, too close to a water meter or something like that, so...
Yeah. And the homeowner is responsible for not just replacing the tree, but also repairing the sidewalk.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Adam.
Where would a citizen go to find an approved street tree list?
That is now residing on the Planning Department website, I believe on the homepage of the Planning Department.
Okay.
I'm busy this weekend, Adam. I can't help, sorry.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jamie and Sharon, and take our thanks back to the committee also. We appreciate all that you're doing.
We sure will. Thank you.
Thanks. Next on our presentations this evening would be the Yamhill County Fire Department's Cooperative Feasibility Study, and so I'll call on the chief to make a presentation. We have a packet in our agenda that goes through that proposal in quite a bit of detail.
30 pages too much, Mr. Mayor? We'll have one slide for each page, so it won't take me very long.
I was worried about that.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, this evening, what we have before you is a scope of work that we've worked with a consultant, and this consultant has we've approached this consultant through a cooperative purchasing process through the Western Fire Chiefs Association. So some of the work that they have done originally, the gentleman who founded the ESCI company was the gentleman who founded Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. He was one of the original chiefs, Jack Snook, of the cooperative process that built Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. This process and project, since 2014, I've been a part of discussions with other departments in collaboration, cooperation, creating districts. In September of 2018, I came to council and did a presentation on some of the challenges that we were facing with our organization and some of the issues that we had internally with workload and services and revenue challenges. And those are still there. And by all means, I'm not trying to discard or discount the challenges that we're currently facing. But at that point in time, the long-term solution that council asked me to move forward with was moving towards cooperative and collaboration in a larger district where we could establish a long-term sustainability for the fire department as we move forward. This feasibility study will conduct the data gathering and the process in an effort to try and determine whether or not a district or some other method of collaboration and cooperation is going to be in the best interest of the organizations that participate. On the schedule that you see in front of you, the top 6 organizations are in. They have committed through their councils and boards that they are absolutely a part of this process. The next 3 are part of the collaboration that's currently going out on the west end. They have to officially approve, but the fire chief, by polling each of the individual board members, have indicated that they will be moving and joining this process with us. I wanted to touch base on a little bit of the scope of work because this project is a huge lift for all of the departments that are going to be participating. The initial phase 1 part of the project, initiation and development of a work plan, really is just identifying the individuals that are going to be doing the tasks, gathering some of the information, establishing timetables, and establishing those methods. The acquisition and review of background information is where our heavy lift comes in. There's a lot of review done on our current availability to meet response time standards. Do we have response time standards? We do. Some departments don't. We have ambulance service standards according to the ambulance service area plan through the county. We have standards of response that we adopted in 2009. The City Council adopted for our fire responses. If the departments don't have those types of standards available, they'll use national standards. There's a fully paid standard and a volunteer standard. And then there will also be stakeholder meetings and field work. Members of when we get into this part of the process, members of the City Council will be a part of that stakeholder group, as well as the elected officials of each of the boards of the fire districts or cities that are participating with us in the process. Phase 2 is the baseline evaluations. Where are we now? What are we doing? What are we capable of doing? What are our responses capable of doing? Where are we as an organization? Are we meeting our standard requirements? And I'll tell you, we're not meeting our standard requirements because we're coming out of a single station and because we don't have enough resources to apply to those things as far as fire goes. EMS, we have a little better scope of breadth because we have an ambulance in Amity and we have an ambulance in Baker Creek. But that is also part of the discussion of as we move forward. but it will not only look at our response time standards and our capabilities, but it'll also look at all the other organizations as well to identify that baseline. Where do we sit now? Then they'll take a financial analysis of each of the organizations. They'll take a look at where we sit, where our revenues come from. Do we have contracts for services? What type of revenues do we have coming in? In our case, 52% of our organization is funded by EMS fees as compared to general fund services. The volunteer departments are all general fund. And we use about an average of $1.50 of the general fund tax levied annually to cover the general fund costs for our fire department. Task C looks at the management components. It takes a look at the organizations, our strategic plans that each of the organizations have that are participating. Do we have cultural issues internally? Are there internal assessments of future challenges already identified? They take a look at the work that's already been done. And then they take a look at all of the things like our HR, our management components, our supervisory relationships and roles, and how we follow state law on public records and those types of things for each organization. And they kind of find where we all fit and figure out what kind of work would have to be done to bring that into one organization. They also take a look at capital facilities and apparatus. Obviously, we're doing that internally with the city of McMinnville with that station, and should we probably not use that as a fire station in the future? What do we do and where do we need to put substations? They'll also look at existing stations and look at existing information and age and effectiveness of the facilities. They also look at the age of the fleets and the effectiveness of the fleets and determine where are we at and what are we doing in an effort to try and take a look at where are we and if we're going to come up to some level of standard, what kind of dollar figure would that look like over the long term so they can apply that figure as they move forward in their work. Service delivery and performance, they'll be looking at demand studies. So we have periods of peak use within our system, then we have periods of lower use within our system. And as every department does, they'll look at that. They'll look at concentration studies, and basically that's to look at the geographical areas of the area that's involved in this study. The city of McMinnville is going to be a higher concentration use of the resources as compared to the rural areas out Baker Creek Road or up Orchard View. They'll look at performance studies, and that's basically our response time standards. Distributions are where are the stations and where can we better relocate our resources with existing stations. Reliability is the report that we do basically for how well we can meet at the 90th percentile requirement, which was built into our standards of response. And then the mutual and automatic aid systems that are currently in place and how well they sustain the system and support the system. They also, during phase 2, evaluate fire and life safety, who has fire marshals, deputy fire marshals, inspection programs, education programs, and they also look at the training component as well as for both fire and EMS and figure out what level of training we're all doing. Some of the organizations are DPSST accredited, some of them are not. Some of them are state EMS members and required to meet the state EMS certification requirements, and some of them are not. Those are things that they will look at as how you bring everyone up to the base level to create this new organization, if that's the way it goes. Then they look at, they take all of that data and all of the information that they have, and they go and take a look at future opportunities for cooperative efforts. The first information they'll say is, if you do nothing, this is what you have, and this is what you will have. So for a starting point, if a decision is made not to do any type of cooperative effort, this is what you're going to have, and this is what your cost will be as you move forward. And then they look at the other options for shared services, and they take a look at what we're doing at Amity, administrative contracts for oversight for administration, administrative contracts for prevention and training. They look at combined, you go from administrative contracts to functional management and consolidation, and then the operational consolidation is usually the last component, and then the full district. It would be the final option. And they look at a variety of those things. And they look at the fiscal breakout of each option so that there you can make conscious decisions about whether or not what is the best route for each of the organizations to go. And then they look at the shared delivery service analysis, and they evaluate the impact of shared services on each jurisdiction. Coordinating and consolidating and becoming part of a district might be in the city of McMinnville's best interest, but it might not be in the Dayton Fire District's best interest at the end of this result. It may or may not be. I'm not saying where it is or it isn't, but this analysis will tell us that. And then the elected officials can make decisions on whether or not they want to move forward and to what level after the report is done. And then they provide presentations and reports, obviously, on what the options are, which ones will have the best success based on not only the fiscal and the resource requirements, but also on the political dynamics of the communities. Is one organization less likely to be willing to be a part of this new organization? There will be some cultural bars or roadblocks with some of the organizations as you start moving forward and to be part of something larger, a larger organization. And anytime you try and bring multiple communities together to find a consolidated base, there's going to be challenges. Those of you who have worked on any of those projects with transportation plans or bypasses, or you understand the dynamics of what we will be trying to work through as we move through this process. What are the highest possibility for service improvements? So they'll say which ones have the best opportunity for success, which ones have the highest possibility for service improvements, and which ones are most favorable for budgets. So they'll actually break it all down with looking at all of the options so that you're not making a decision in a vacuum. You have all of the information on whether or not it is in the best interest to move forward and move towards the districting option, or are there other options out there that are in the best interest of the city and the citizens that we serve in the long run? Phase 4 is obviously just the development of the drafted final reports, and they do several joint presentations that we would set up to have the elected officials from each of the agencies involved, as well as the staff, to be there for those presentations. And all of the information that I just kind of discussed and shared with you would be a part of that. Phase 5 we have set up as budgeted for next fiscal year. Basically, if the city and one entity, or the city and 9 entities, choose to move forward in some way, aspect, or shape or form of this project, there will be an implementation plan on what's the best next steps, and they'll lay the roadmap out for us. And then they also build a strategic plan based off of the implementation plan for us, and they'll set up several public meetings to help address and start the dialogue of how we move forward from here and what that looks like as far as the political process to do the things that we would need to do. If the recommendation is not to move forward with a district, it's just to move forward with some sort of contractual obligations like we're doing with Amity, but on a larger scope, then that would not necessarily require votes. It would just be requiring contractual obligations, and the workload's going to be different. The lift is going to be different compared to going to a full district where there's going to have to be elections and a lot of marketing for the final product. So on the slide, what you see there currently is an 8-month timetable for this project. The designators in red are staff involvement and not council involvement or elected officials involvement. The areas in blue are elected officials are involved in parts of those processes only also. So the reason I wanted to kind of show the breakout, there was some question about council participation through this process and what that would look like and how much and where would those involvement in the timeline of this be. The collection of the data, the identifying the staff members, the developing of the work plan, that's going to be all staff time. Baseline agency evaluations, the majority of the baseline emergency evaluations, agency evaluations are going to be data crunches from the CAD system, budgets, agreements, standards, all the things that we work with on a daily basis. So that will be things that's where the red dialogue is. As we go into the future opportunities for cooperative efforts, The baseline for agency evaluations, the 5th month is blue because there'll be dialogue with the members of the councils or boards of each of the departments on, is that really where you want to be or not? Would you like to be better? Which is, I'm assuming we would like to be better than we are. So that helps them kind of identify the need. So as they move into the opportunities for cooperative efforts, they can determine whether the need is going to have to come from a revenue increase or does the need come from a partnership, and that helps them work out their overall plan. And then future opportunities for cooperative efforts, and that part is really where the stakeholders have a large say, and is what is in our best interest of our community, what's in the best interest of our citizens, and a lot of that dialogue will be heavily in the policy groups of each of the organizations as to what do we want to see happen and how do we want it to happen. So taking the red away, it's a 3-month project by the consultants. The red is the work that we have to do to get them the data and the information for them to produce the product out the backside and make the recommendations that they would make. If we can shorten up our data gathering time, but we have 9 fire departments that will be gathering data and trying to accomplish the data in the same way, shape, and form. So they'll given their estimate, it's an 8-month time frame. Speaking with the John Stoffer, who is the Western director of the ESCI for these types of projects, he indicated that if the city council chose to move forward in a direction, in a district as the biggest picture at the end of the project, he said it could be anywhere from 1 year to be ready for a vote to 2 years to be ready for a vote. 2 years would be depending on the dynamic of the politics of the groups that were involved in moving forward with the vote. 1 year if it were with people we're already partnered with, and that was the extent of the partnership that we were moving forward with. So my goal was to try and get to you kind of what we're looking at working on, where we'll need some council assistance and support in decision making as we move through the process, and try and lay out some tentative timelines for the larger picture of things as we move forward. I'll open up for questions. I don't think I have a question slide. Nope.
So Chief, the cost on this, and do we have it budgeted in our current budget?
The cost is budgeted for the entire project except for phase 5. That cost, I believe, is $8,000, and you'll see a request in my next year's budget for that cost, because the duration of the first portion of this will move into the next fiscal year. The rest of the budget is budgeted for in my professional services, or the partners have committed to pay $3,000 a membership to participate in the process.
And can you expand on phase 5? It just says other services.
Sure, I'm sorry. Phase 5 basically is they develop, let me find it here again.
Oh, thank you.
They develop, if the decision is made to move forward with a district, let's just say it's the big picture one, they develop implementation steps, benchmarks, and lay out an implementation plan to get us to that district. And then they also spend a day with the key stakeholders doing a strategic plan on the implementation steps. And then they also coordinate public hearing meetings around the plan and the event to try and get the public input and support for the project as we were to move forward, and I get that public information out. They are not a marketing agency. They're not, so there are other people that we have that we can use to try and work with us on surveys and marketing that would go on simultaneous with some of this work. So we can kind of help guide the discussion on which direction do we think is best. And we have some of those folks that we've used in the past for some of that they're relatively smaller priced professional service contracts that we could use to help us with some of those surveys and feedback issues that we could do as we go into the public comment process.
And how engaged is your fire team in the process at this point?
So at this point, we just got this scope of work back. We're just waiting for the contract to come back to us. I've had one meeting with the E-Board on this project specifically and given them the draft scope of work. We'll be doing a full presentation. I'm going to be taking some time off here the first 2 weeks in November. As soon as I get back, I'll be meeting with the staff, all hands staff meeting, and giving them a similar presentation as this on where we're at, what we're doing, and the union, the internal union, will be one of the stakeholders that's a part of the process as we move forward.
Sal? When you say that the internal staff, the union will be part of the process, is that during the first 4 months of engagement, or is that after the first 4 months of engagement when the plan's being done?
I would really love them to take on some of the work that I have to do in the CAD, but that really kind of falls into my bailiwick. It's going to be during the input phases of what do we want it to be, what should be, what services should we be providing, where are we at, and that the dialogue around, a lot of the dialogue that we are currently having around all of those types of things. What's our workload? What kind of staff do we need to help get to the point where we need to be? They'll be a part of the stakeholders in those public discussions.
Is that part of the first 4 months?
That's in the blue section. That's in the blue section, yeah.
That's in the blue section?
Blue is the stakeholder portions, yeah.
So you're going to kind of put together the budgeting and the need.
I'm just going to give the data. The red is just data collection. Okay. They're going to come back with data crunched and identified, and with the types of, some of the types of reports. And then when we get into the discussion around where are the needs and those types of things, that's when they will be a part of that stakeholder process. We'll continue, within our organization, we'll continue to talk about where we're at and what's going on and where we're at in the process so that everyone stays up to speed as to where we're at. But they will be listed as one of the key stakeholders in the stakeholder list when we have those discussions on service levels and needs, so that internal needs as well as external needs are addressed.
So if I can just kind of step back a little bit, what's the current staffing situation in the department, and have we been able to meet the concerns that were raised by the staff during arbitration? I'm a little concerned about the timeline being maybe 2021 before we go to the ballot. Do you have any concerns about a more immediate need to address staffing?
We haven't added any additional staff, if that's what you're asking me. We're still at the same number of employees. And
I'm asking, I've perceived this to be something of a critical staffing issue, and so I'm concerned about a 3-year timeline, and I'm wondering if there's any consideration of interim steps to address staffing, if that might be part of this proposal, or if that's something that can be done contemporaneous to this proposal, whether that's SAFER grant or those.
So when I spoke to you last time, I said the grants were not necessarily a good idea if we didn't have a funding source, or at least moving towards a mechanism towards the end of the process. In my opinion, we're moving towards a mechanism towards the end of the process, so I don't know why we wouldn't want to look at grant opportunities if the grant cycles are coming up, I think, in the next month or two, and they run consecutive with federal fiscal years, which would be an October commitment. I don't know the parameters of the grant. They change every year, so I don't have any kind of information. And obviously I come back to council with that before making any kind of decisions on whether or not I want to do.
Okay, but like consideration of a levy as an interim step would not be part of the scope of the project?
So this project is specific to consolidated feasibility. It's not bringing in consultants' opinions on should we do a levy between now and then. Our challenges that we said back in September are still the challenges we currently face. Sorry about that. So those things are still out there, Councilor Peralta. Nothing has really changed. I have one vacancy. It's a part-time vacancy right now, and I have another full-time individual who's told me they'll be leaving employment with us in 3 weeks. So we still have turnover going on. I have 57% of my staff is below 5 years of employment, which is a challenge and problematic for us. We made one minor adjustment internally to try and We created an additional cert pay for a senior person to try and bring some consistency to our training program, to try and address some of the youth within the organization. So we're doing everything we can internally to try and address those issues. But this will not look at a levy, and it's not even part of the discussion. It's specifically to the to the districting or the consolidation purposes.
Thank you for,
Sure.
for that.
Yeah.
I just had a couple of other questions, one of which I think you've already answered, but I just want to public. So under the districting proposals that may come down the pike, it's not the case that all the districts need to join the district in order for the district to take effect. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Those that wish to participate, there'll be a conscious decision by a group of participants at the end, whether that group is 2 or 4 or 9. More than likely, based on my background and knowledge in consolidation and districting, that will probably be what is recommended. Whether or not, if it's 2 or 3 or 4 that we're currently working in consult with, like we are with Amity and Lafayette, it will be a much simpler transition and the time frame will be much faster. If it includes the West End and Dundee, who is a part of this study, and I'm happy they're a part of this study, but it's a different dynamic. When we are doing just a mix of our organization and all volunteers, it's an easier mix than when we do a mix of our organization and the West End, because the West End has a bargaining group, we have a bargaining group, and Dundee has employees that are not represented. So that part alone would take a renegotiation of contracts, in addition to the work that goes along with everything else. So
Thank you for that context.
certainly.
The only other question I have is kind of a pedantic one, but I want to make sure I'm understanding what I'm reading. On page 10 of the consulting report.
That's a typo. It's been corrected.
I think it might be, actually.
I called them out on it already, and it's been corrected. Was that the
3 jurisdictions?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's been corrected already. There were 2 areas in here that there were typos that probably they had used the templated information, and that was one of them, and the other one was, I think, was on page 6.
Okay.
Where they talked about, I've got the new one in front of me, but we caught those, and those have been corrected. This will be, this document, once we get the contract, will be attached to the contract as a part of the living document that we move forward. So, but we did clean up those 2.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief.
Other comments? Questions?
I have a question about the costs, and you mentioned that we're bearing some of the communities that are also part of the study are bearing some of the costs, but it's not equally split.
That's correct.
So it's $3,000 per other community. So it's this amount isn't the total amount financial impact to us.
I have budgeted $50,000 in my professional services for the contract that was approved by council last budget cycle. We thought, based on telephone conversations, that would be close to the actual estimated cost, and it was not including West Valley, the 3 departments out west. So it came in at $62,000. So they're going to contribute $3,000 a piece to offset the cost of the project.
So you'll be in budget what you expected with that?
Yes. And then you see the breakout of the 3 West End departments with their contribution. That's for the full amount of their participation.
Okay. And I think you already answered this. If they come back with 0, there's still a benefit to this study, in that we will have a clearer idea of what our collaboration, how to optimize the collaboration among communities.
Right. So what this will do is this will tell you how well your fire department is doing or not doing in fire and EMS. It will also tell each of the other organizations how well their fire department is doing according to these standards. And then it will let you have some decision points and factors on, we've already established a standard for us within the city of McMinnville, and we have an ambulance service area contract that has a establish response standards for our ambulance. If we're not meeting those guidelines and we're not meeting those timeframes, or I've been receiving a lot of questions about how often we use Tualatin Valley to come in and help us out or move up, and how often we move to help other organizations. So those types of questions will be identified in here in our weak areas and our strengths, and then we'll take a look at, is it in our best interest as a community to move forward with a district if a higher tax rate for fire protection is warranted, going to the district and making it a permanent rate might be the wise thing to do for the sustainability of the fire service as we move forward.
Okay, great.
We will get a lot of information on our performance out of this. We'll get there will be other evaluation points as well as that. Some of it will be similar to my September presentation on where we are with staffing and how young our organization is, and that will be addressed with some of the points that they work out in the recommendations at the end.
And that can be very helpful as we head towards consolidations, that we can bring best practices forward as we bring ourselves together, correct?
Yeah.
Will there be an analysis of the rolling stock of all of the different fire departments, and because I suspect that will be rather interesting.
Yeah, so what they'll do is they'll take a look at, depending on the organizations that decide to join, we'll know exactly the age of the fleets, the effectiveness of the vehicles that we have in the fleets, and we know how many reserve units we have to have per number of engines, and that's where you get some of the efficiencies in the capital sides. But we're in a rural community, and a lot of the agencies have really old apparatus, so that's the downside to some of those things. Some of those costs are going to be pretty high as far as trying to get the fleet to where it needs to be. But the advantage is you don't have to have as many vehicles because you have a limited number of reserves for the stations. You don't have to have one or two for each department.
Other questions? Adam?
When in the study does the study come back with recommended tax rates of what it would cost to fund? So is that at month 4 or is that at
no, in the phase four, month 6, I guess. During the presentations, they will say, in order for you, let me just go back just one screen here. How do I get back? Oh, come on now. Don't do that to me.
Previous.
Thank you. No, but that's not the one I needed. No, I just did it. There we go. So in the phase 3, at the end of phase 3 there, it's going to evaluate the impact of shared services on each jurisdiction and identify the fiscal impact of each strategy. So take a look at the dollars coming in versus the cost of whether it is IGAs for consolidation of administration or a full district. It'll put a cost associated with that, and then the cost will actually be a tax rate. That way you'll know. That means we're going to have to agree to move our tax rate of what the city currently uses for general fund for us is about $1.50. It might have to go to $1.75 or $2 in order to use this method, but in this method it's $1.60 or whatever the case may be. And then, but without creating a district, you're not creating a new tax rate. So if you want to go with that model, that may mean you're going to have some recurring levies in order to sustain that operational level. It'll be conscious decisions that are made based off factual information and not best guesses.
Will they give us some insights as to how to structure moving financially from general funding of each city or levies to a fire district, i.e., let's say for McMinnville, if we take it off of our current general budget, I've heard a desire to indicate to the public that we wouldn't increase our fee for a period of time
So they'll probably give you some feedback on that, but I can tell you that the consultants that we would bring in for the marketing strategy would give you a lot more feedback on the ability to provide success with an election for the people that have been successful in creating districts. Carleton was one of them in expanding their district. Redmond, those groups, the municipalities themselves put a pause in their ability to use the funds that were freed up by the or incrementally committed to an incremental use of those funds.
And capping that incremental.
Yes. You know, Redmond, I believe, probably Heather can speak to it, but I believe Redmond made the commitment that any use of a certain portion of those funds had to go to an election. Is that accurate?
Well, in Redmond, we actually amended our charter to reduce the levy rate of the amount of.
Okay.
That went out.
Okay. So there's different ways to address it. Carleton committed to no more than 3% increases on their ongoing. They have the tax authority, but they chose to not go higher except for 3%. Annually. And those are going to be some of the political discussions that have to occur, because I know there's a need besides fire out there. What does that look like? And how do we market it? That's really going to end up, and what is the political will to do what?
When does the clock start ticking? Is it November 1st? We're starting month one, or?
Well, after tonight, I spoke with John this morning. He's sending us a draft contract. So as soon as the contract gets here, Jeff has the capacity to sign it without coming to council for approval, because its dollar value is low enough. So as soon as we get the council, as soon as we get Jeff to sign I get the contract in hand, Jeff to sign it, we're moving forward with, they'll be setting up a data pouch, and we'll start working on sending data now as we go. But the time frame probably will start for a January timeframe.
And then last question, to piggyback on Councilor Peralta's question about SAFER grants. With that timetable, we're not going to have that tax rate number back before this upcoming SAFER grant opening period would open and close. Do you feel that we as an organization, without this, have enough data to know what we would need independently?
So it will depend on what the grant parameters are for what kind of staff I can apply for. If it lays out the way some of the past ones have, it was specific to get to that fourth person engine company. So that would limit me on the numbers, or significantly expand the numbers based on whether I was going to try and do a whole nother engine company or just bring the one we have up to a 4-person engine company. I don't know what the rules are going to be about this grant, so I can't speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
In the past on the SAFER grants, how many positions have they been willing to fund through that?
It's not positions, it's dollars. And their success is it's really based around firefighter safety, and 4-person engine companies have been a large part of that. There's been other things that have come up as part of the SAFER grant, but that has been the way it was designed in an attempt to try and get staffing levels up. There's 2 components. There's a volunteer part of the SAFER grant, volunteer retention, and then there's the paid staff firefighters in seats to try and accomplish that mission also. They have gone from 3 years to 4 years to 3 years to 4 years. Ultimately, the last year, I believe it was 75% of the costs for the first year were covered, 50 for the second, and 25 for the third. So that's kind of gives you a snapshot of what the potential is for the costs as we move forward. I don't know what this year's will be, but.
So if we were to get a SAFER grant in this upcoming fiscal year, that would cover 75% of the cost potentially for a certain number of staff. I mean, it's a dollar amount, I understand, but for a certain number of staffing, and then 50% in year 2, 25% in year 3. So
that would be the grant coverage.
Some of that.
So we would have to pay 25% for the first year, 50% for the second year, and 75% for the third year.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions? Did you get feedback that you needed from us?
Yes, I wanted to make sure that you understood what the crazy chief was doing.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, you know, the process is set out. We know where we're headed. It's been a discussion we've had for years, Chief, and we're getting close to implementing that with this this feasibility study. So
I hope it gives us the information that we need to help the organization be successful.
Well, thank you, Chief. We appreciate your presentation. We are now to advice and information items, which usually is much earlier, but we're still in the same. So let's have reports from council on committee and board assignments. I'll start with Sal and go that way, giving others opportunity to lead off. So Sal and then Adam, and then we'll come our way around.
Thank you, Mayor. Our Council of Governments committee meeting is actually tomorrow, so I don't have an update on that. So I'll just move on to Adam.
Okay.
Airport hasn't met, and YCOM we did meet. Something that I feel is pretty exciting that I know a lot of the YCOM members and probably the chief is that we're going to start an Pulse Point project, which is an app for the public to assist in cardiac arrest. We're just starting that process, so it's not like it's going to happen tomorrow, but ever since I got on the YCOM board, that's been something I've asked about every budget cycle, and it's pretty exciting for myself and the community in general that if somebody's in a public area like a grocery store and somebody goes into cardiac arrest, a trained bystander that has the app on their phone could be there to assist and provide life-saving help before a medic or a paramedic on their phones, and it just, I think, makes a better community. So I'm happy that we, as YCOM and as the city of McMinnville, the chief's kind of doing most of the heavy lifting on that, from my understanding. Yeah, so pretty exciting for us as a city. Other than that, there was a tax rate passed for 911 service, so that's still getting worked out with, I think, this short session coming up on when we're going to see dollars for that, which will probably be next fiscal year, and they're going to slowly trickle in, and then what we're going to do with that money for infrastructure. So I think it's 25 cents a bill per month per line, so pretty small, but it makes a big difference in technology that is always aging. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Zach?
Landscape committee met. I talked about my one thing I had at the last committee meeting. They reviewed street tree removal and approved it. They talked about large-scale updates to the street tree revision, the street tree list approved, and their neighborhood-by-neighborhood approach. And then there was a review of the code enforcement division's abilities and path to compliance in light of the path to compliance discussion. The Historic Landmark Committee met in council chambers last week and gave approval for some work down here near St. James on the remodel of an existing historic home from 1890s. So it was a cool old home, and which included the construction of an ADU in the rear, so adding an additional dwelling unit downtown. Thank you to the relaxed ADU standards for creating another place to stay downtown. The Kids on the Block Technical Advisory Committee, we're still waiting for our joint City Council School Board meeting, and that's my report.
Thank you, Zach. Remy?
The Affordable Housing Task Force meeting is postponed by 1 week, so it'll be meeting next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Not tomorrow, the following Wednesday at 10 a.m. And the Housing for Homelessness Committee was also delayed by 1 month. So that's my entire report.
URAC was canceled this month, and so we have our next meeting first Wednesday of November, so November 6th.
Thank you. Kelly?
The Visit McMinnville committee had a big New York showing week. I don't know, it may not have been a whole week. Had a great time, talking with the people in New York, getting a lot of influential writers and people in to see what they're doing and what McMinnville's doing. There was a really nice art piece that was developed while they were there. Had an interesting time getting it home. And things are going well. They're just in discussion of possibly hiring a supplemental person to help them with some of the lesser decisive aspects of their job because they are very busy. And on the Urban Growth Boundary Urbanization Committee, there was a discussion of parks in the urban growth plan, and then also an outreach to visit McMinnville and a number of other entities on how to develop commercial property, and I will defer to Heather on most of this. You can do it in your own time or whatever.
Just a quick follow-up. So we are in the, what we call the employment land needs analysis. We did the housing, and then also what we call public, semi-public land. So that's what Councilor Mankey's talking about. We talked about what forecast needs are at our last meeting. So how much land we think we need in these various different types. And then at our next meeting on November 14th, we're going to start combining that with our buildable lands inventory to see what need looks like. We hope to have a final report on all of this work by the end of the calendar year that we can bring to you in a work session format.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Just a couple of things. We've had the Newburgh-Dundee Bypass Committee meeting. We're in the process right now of updating our letters of support and growing that substantially all the way to the coast because of the impact that it has. We're looking at the OTC meeting again in November. We think that that's going to be within the Tri-County area of Marion, Polk, or Yamhill County, and we want to make a presentation. That's why we're trying to get all the letters of support. We've updated our information piece for the OTC as we possibly go and make that presentation. Last Friday, we had the County Housing Solutions meeting, and we had Jimmy Jones, who is the head of the Marion and Polk County Community Access Partnership, like YCAP, and he came and we had 2 hours of really good discussion around homelessness and some of the really tough issues associated with that. The two counties, as some of you know, are apart. They're going together for the continuum of care. Yamhill County is determined not to be a part of that, so we discussed some of that from a different perspective. Just very quickly, Water and Light, at our commission meeting last, we had a report on our forestation efforts, and we're at the end of the year. We've got new contracts moving forward. Again, we, on a consistent basis, are cutting about $3 to $4 million worth of timber that offset our water cost and keeps us second in the lowest water rates in the state. We had a report on our conservations, and as we were talking about climate change and some of those things, McMinnville Water and Light does a tremendous value in going in and replacing LED lights, and that really has an effect on the carbon footprint of the amount of electricity coming in. So I think as we look at those discussions, we bring Mac Water and Light in because it really has an effect. We were able to outfit 700 homes last year with a complete updating of the newest LED lights and shower heads and power stripped adapters that are motion censored, and those would be very costly. We get those conservation dollars from BPA, and it's over $1.5 million that we're able to give back to the community. So we talked a little bit about that. We had a financial discussion where we're trying to bring our finances more in line with what the city's doing in a narrative fashion. Utility financials are a different animal. They're really hard to understand. And we've created a Excel program to put our stuff in that makes it look like municipal and other types of financials. So the financial person, the lay financial person can pick it up and say, I understand where you're at. So we did that. And then we had a number of items that were on an executive committee that we're working through. That was half the meeting. I just wanted to remind everyone that Jeff's annual review is out on, and Sean, you've received that. They've extended our completion date to November 1st. I would ask all of you to make sure that you're aware of that and to do a really thorough, good job, because it's only as good as the input that we give. Just boxes sometimes, it gives a score, but I think your response to the questions are very helpful. I just want to let those staff knows about this, but we will have a new phone system fully integrated with the city and the county Thursday evening. Everybody's been going through training, and we've been having some fun transferring and talking to one another from that perspective. And then yesterday, ballots went out. Utilize them, you guys. It's very important.
Yes, everyone.
Utilize them. And that is my report. Let's go to department heads. Chief? Susan? Jenny? Heather?
Yeah, so two things to follow up on the comments from the students this evening. We do have a Cool McMinnville plan that was adopted by the city of McMinnville. I can go through that and bring that to this department heads as we do the staff discussion to bring up to you. But in addition to that, we also have a sustainability committee.
We do.
Yes, we do.
At the city of McMinnville. It has been in hibernation for several years. I have had requests from some staff members to revitalize that. It has a action plan. It has a lot of, we haven't seen the resolution that you've seen, but based on what you were describing, many of those things are in that action plan for the sustainability committee, so we can bring that discussion forward as well. And that was an internal staff committee. This was all before my time. So, and then just wanted to remind everyone that we do have the youth positions on the committees. We really would like to get them populated. We have a youth participating on our Affordable Housing Task Force Committee, and he's brought such great insight into our discussions and is really participating and is a valuable member there. We had a meeting with the high school late last week to visit with their administrative team about how to sort of partner better with the high school and get students involved in city work. And it was a great meeting, and we feel like we're going to make a lot of progress this year on bringing students into what we do. But for anybody who's interested in passing the word on, we are collecting applications right now for youth liaisons for all of our city committees. So.
Thank you, Heather. Elizabeth? Rebecca, anything? David? A part of your packet this evening was the September building reports, and the July cash and investment reports were also in the packet. Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and adjourn our council meeting. Thank you.